to Thabo Dloti, the CEO of Liberty, watching Captains of Industry here on CNBC Africa. Thabo, it's been an interesting journey for you, and I highlight now a couple of competing brands: Old Mutual, Stanlib, obviously part of the Liberty stable. And when I was doing the research for this interview, it occurred to me I wanted to ask you right up at the top the difference between Old Mutual's culture and the Liberty culture.
Yeah, well, I think Old Mutual is a very old company with very established norms, which has been, I think, pursued for quite a while. Liberty, on the other hand, has seen a lot of change in leadership, change in culture with the takeover of Standard Bank. So all those have really changed the culture of Liberty, so to speak, to be a far more modern, I would say, very different. And leadership is also very different, coming from different places. So it's infused with cultures from different parts of the organizations across South Africa.
March 2014, 1st of March 2014, you were appointed as the first black CEO of Liberty. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it was a great moment. It was a proud moment, but at the same time, it was challenging. I mean, I think I was appointed with clear understanding of the challenges I had. So I suppose I focused more on the challenges at hand more than I worried a lot about what the moment meant at the time.
You mentioned the challenges ahead, so let's jump right into some of the key challenges you are facing at the helm at the moment.
Yeah, I think most of the challenges that we are facing are really macro. We are facing an economy that is not growing. We are facing a global outlook that is difficult and challenging. And clearly, if you are leading an organization like Liberty, you need to make do in that environment and find a way of protecting the existing business and at the same time finding growth. And those are the key challenges that we are pursuing at this moment.
Finding growth in the current environment is challenging, considering that we've seen a contraction in the latest GDP print in South Africa. Are you optimistic about the future?
I'm optimistic about the future of the continent as a whole. I believe that when we see our fortunes together with the rest of the continent, we are better placed to actually pursue growth initiatives. But if we think about growth, we think about our prospects only in the context of South Africa, that's very difficult.
To that point, Nigeria and the acquisition in Nigeria, in fact there are two acquisitions in Nigeria that you've been eyeing out, is that correct?
We are pursuing a number of acquisitions in Nigeria.
But, you're after that consumer, that 165 million strong consumer in Nigeria.
Yeah, I think Nigeria makes a very interesting case for what the continent presents for us, but more so given the size of the opportunity, given also the momentum that's been created by some of the reforms. I think we forget that Nigeria has been continuously reforming itself since it went to the civilian population. And that is important because it has meant that there is a great demand for the things that we do. And that demand is not dependent on where we are in the economic cycle. It's driven a lot by the fact that society has moved on and it wants to participate in the mainstream world. And that's really where we come in.
What model will you be pursuing in the Nigerian context? If you're looking for an acquisition, then a JV structure, or will you rebrand as Liberty into that environment?
Yeah. Well, luckily for Liberty, Standard Bank has preceded us into Nigeria. So in the main, we seek to partner with Standard Bank wherever we operate, and we'll do the same in Nigeria. Clearly, we are Liberty, we are not Standard Bank, we happen to be a subsidiary, but we are an independent company. We seek to establish our brand, and we really believe that our brand resonates with that community, with its aspirations. Being Liberty, representing a Liberty flag in a country which is aspiring for growth, which is really looking forward to participating in the mainstream world, we believe it's a fit for our brand. So of course we'll be branding ourselves Liberty and Stanlib.
If you are aiming for consumer size, then, or consumer population size, Ethiopia may potentially be on your radar. 94 million people in that territory?
Yeah, look, we've been watching Ethiopia. Clearly, it's an attractive market from a point of view of it's also gone through its own reforms, it's stabilized its situation, and it's looking forward. It's rebuilding itself from within. Clearly, the challenge with Ethiopia is foreign ownership, the fact that from a financial services point of view, we don't have any opportunities, not even that they are limited. We don't have an opportunity to participate. Clearly, as that opens up, that will be one of the areas where we're looking to going into.
Do you think that you'll have balance from a regional perspective? So we're very clear about your West African aspirations. East Africa?
We are well established and entrenched in East Africa out of the Nairobi base. We have businesses across the lines of businesses that we carry in Kenya, Uganda, and now South Sudan, and now proceeding to Tanzania and other markets around there. So absolutely, East Africa is really an important element of what we drive. Clearly, Ethiopia has been pursued from that regional reach.
I can't ignore the South Sudan, the mention of South Sudan. Give me a little insight into how you navigate troubled areas. And they pop up all over the place. We know, having traversed the continent from a business perspective.
I think the first thing that we have to acknowledge is that all these countries have got a history, but if we judge them by their past, we miss the opportunity they present for us. South Sudan, it's a new country that wants all the things that established and modern countries have in Africa. So it's modeling itself around other countries and what's happening in East Africa. What I'm really excited about East African countries in general, they are seeking to their place in the world, and they are looking forward to how they can play a role, how can they compete, not only as part of that region, but individually. So absolutely, that's an opportunity we are seeing in South Sudan. That's the opportunity we are seeing in Tanzania. They may not be evident as yet in terms of the quantums of output that's coming out of those countries. But if you listen to the leaders, if you listen to the people that are driving the economy and policy formulation, they're looking forward and they're making decisions that enable those countries to go forward.
The excitement that you have for Africa, the rest of Africa, is tangible. Let's come back to South Africa and your market positioning within this context. You've got the heavyweights, Old Mutual, Sanlam, Liberty. How can you increase your market share given the size of your competitors?
Yeah. Well, the way I look at competition is that I cannot compete like Old Mutual. We're very different. I cannot compete like Sanlam. We're very different. But I can compete like Liberty. Liberty in the retail market, it's an affluent business. We're the dominant affluent provider from an insurance and investments point of view. That's our niche, and it's an important niche. It introduces a completely different dynamic and characteristics if you're an investor in Liberty. Amongst other things, it tends to ride economic storms a lot better because clearly our clients are much more affluent, and the way they think, their relationship with their investments, their relationship with the policies that they take from us is very, very different. Clearly, the market itself is limited. That's where the challenge arises. So we have looked into putting the corporate or the institutional side of our business as the second opportunity for growth. And we really think that's important. Again, we've competed very differently from our bigger competitors. We've focused a lot more on the SMME market, where we've got a very dominant and strong position that we have built on for a number of years. And again, that puts us in a very strong position to take advantage of some of the demographic shifts that are happening. Some of them driven around regulation, some of them driven around how our economy, I believe, will restructure, where SMEs are going to play an increasing role. Same skill set that we have used to penetrate that market, we are taking into penetrating the rest of the continent.
Is the savings culture, which has long been a bugbear for the South African economy, is the savings culture improving? Are more people starting to save?
No. That's a short answer to it. But is it unexpected? I really believe that what we are forgetting is that we are dealing with an economy that's been restructuring. If you have a lot of people that didn't participate in the mainstream economy and that are starting to participate, the first thing they do is consumption. They go after consumption. We see this everywhere. It's part of the development of the economies. It's that people consume first before they actually start saving, which is why short-term insurance is more important in some jurisdictions, because people, once they've bought clothing and other things, they buy household goods, things that make their lives work a little bit better. And clearly, that's really where we are at in
You're
the mainstream.
pointing to a cycle, just
Absolutely.
an inevitable cycle.
Absolutely.
How long does it take to turn? When will we see the savings culture in the country improve?
I think in the context of South Africa, we've got a challenge. We've got the developed part of the country where savings are well entrenched, it's truly entrenched, and you can see that the accumulation of assets, what they acquire is different. They are acquiring properties, they are acquiring financial instruments, which is expected because that's a stage of consumption where they are at. They are consuming capital goods and productive goods that are allowing them to obviously extend their income earning capacity. The mainstream, the majority of the people in the country don't have that, and they will take a while actually to get to that. And to my mind, we really have a very interesting 15 years ahead of us, where if the economy does not absorb those people, clearly that will be delayed even further, because until people can acquire things that make their lives a little bit better, you can't talk about them saving for the long term. So we have a challenge really from a growth point of view to say, how do we make sure that those people are included in the economy, go through that phase, and then start thinking about long-term future. That's dependent on what happens into absorbing the unemployed, particularly the youth unemployment, which is obviously a bigger issue for us.
Talking about challenges, the reputation of the broader long-term insurance industry, the retirement and saving industry. Do you believe that we have seen an appropriate turnaround, or is there still mistrust? The general consumer mistrusting the larger institutions in the long-term insurance space?
Yeah, I really believe that the number speaks for themselves. Most people trust the institutions they deal with. Why do I say this? Because the level of savings, despite low savings rate that you and I have, those that save continue obviously engaging with these institutions. And I really like the institutions that have been put around from a regulatory point of view, the ombudsman and all those things, have ensured that consumers are able to engage where they are feeling uncomfortable about how the industry is dealing with them. They've got an outlet, they've got places they can go to, and they can take the institution on. And one other thing we're forgetting is that social media has become a very powerful thing. Hello Peter is something that a lot of people frequent and use as a threat if they're treated, they feel mistreated. So absolutely, from my point of view, I believe the industry plays its role, and I believe that there are safeguards of ensuring that it does exactly what it's intended to do.
Let me ask that question in a different way. In your career in this environment, have you seen a dramatic change? Were you perhaps not proud of the industry that you started in, and now it's chalk and cheese?
I suppose, Bronwyn, the way I look at these things is the industry that was, the retirement fund environment started in the 50s. Completely different world then. The world view around financial institutions, the rewards that were shared between the providers and the people that were obviously enjoying the benefits were different. Society has moved on. There's a greater level of transparency that is expected. The scarcity that was there, that's justified some of the high fees that were charged at the time, is no longer there. So absolutely, I believe the industry has kept up with the evolution of society as it ought to. Otherwise, it becomes irrelevant.
I want to talk a bit about your leadership style, and to quote Ben Korisang, who is within the Stan Lib management fold, he says that it's remarkable how much time you have for individuals within your team. Is that something that you consciously set about trying to achieve?
The joy of what I do is the interesting minds that I encounter on a daily basis. So absolutely, for me, that's really the crux of what I do, is engage and challenge and be challenged by what the people bring to the table. I truly believe that we are a fortunate industry that we are able to attract such insightful and people that are really can do great things. So absolutely, I do enjoy that, because it's part of the things that I look forward to.
Give us a little insight into what a day in the life of Thabo Dloti looks like, and not a Saturday or a Sunday, although I'm hoping that doesn't look the same as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
It most certainly doesn't look the same. Look, I really believe, I kind of run a very strict regime of waking up 4:30, go for a run, except for 2 days a week. I tend to do that. That's good for me because it allows me time to think. and it also allows me time to really have a good exercise and come back feeling strong. My day usually starts, I've got a series of meetings that cover the whole day. The key part of the meeting, certainly the ones that I run, is to just do that, shape the agenda of what we are trying to achieve. And in the main, our shaping of the agenda is about the critical decisions that we need to take for now and the critical decisions that we believe needs to be made in the future. And trying to balance those two things is really what I run through the day. I try once every week to actually have a client engagement or a key stakeholder external engagement, because I believe that we can also be absorbed by the things that we are doing internally, and that's important because it allows certainly us, but most certainly it challenges me to open up my eyes to what's happening. I try to pick different client segments, different stakeholders, because they really bring a different way of thinking.
So that external visibility is important in your diary?
Absolutely, it's important in my diary.
And then how long is your day? So, the bulk of your meetings, interestingly spoke to somebody recently who was in a top tier management position who has come about, or who has set about 15-minute meetings, in that if you can't achieve what you need to achieve in the first 15 minutes, then you are wasting your time. Does that have any resonance with you?
Look, I mean, the way my meetings work, the one-on-one meetings range from the directional meetings where we're sitting together, we're giving each other direction, and usually those are quick, that's like 30 minutes meetings, to what I call engagement meetings, where I'm finding out what Bronwyn is about, where is she going, what are the issues, how do we unlock the opportunities that she's seeing we're not getting. Those tend to be a little bit longer because I try to slow things down and get to understand the person a little bit better, and tends to last for an hour or an hour and a half. I try to have those over lunchtime so that we can relax and have lunch and talk like that. I value those because that's really where you get a lot out of the things. You don't just club them. And the others are meetings where there's a group meetings. The group meetings also, as I said, vary between the ones where we are making quick decisions. They tend to last for an hour, to the ones where we are thinking long term and we are really trying. And 3 hours is usually my minimum to say that let's talk for 3 hours and let's have 2 agenda items, but let's explore them in detail. Let's do the pre-work before that to make sure that we've done proper and thorough preparation, so that by the time we arrive at a meeting, we are not trying to gather data, but we're actually discussing the substance of what has been presented. I try to balance those two things.
Another commonality that struck me, having spent a great deal of time chatting to different captains of industries in different sectors, is the amount that leaders are starting to give back. What is your philosophy, both personal and from a Liberty perspective?
Yeah, I really think it's important. I really think the society around us can only do better if we apply ourselves beyond our jobs. Our jobs are important and they are all consuming, but I believe that the skill sets, the insights we have are equally applicable to other things that society needs. So absolutely, we are required to contribute to that. I'm involved in a number of institutions, schools, I'm involved in some of the board of governors, I'm involved in education programs, I'm involved in giving strategy advice to some of the other leaders in non-financial services. The other one is a bishop of a church who we're strategizing. I was giving him insights in terms of how we do that. So mentoring others in that light is important for me because I really believe that it gives me an opportunity to actually understand what's happening in society around us.
And Liberty, do you find that you are shaping Liberty's CSI with your personal preferences? Education.
Yeah.
Coming through strongly? Well,
luckily, Liberty, my interests and Liberty's interests are aligned around education, so it's not a difficult. Our transformation agenda, in many ways, I could have written that before I joined Liberty because it's so in line, so that helps. So the things that we are doing there and the things that I'm personally sponsoring, essentially we sponsor different elements of the transformational agenda as executives. The ones that I drive are the ones that are of interest to me, and they've got a lot to do with mentoring others, and that's really where I get involved.
When you look at South Africa today, if you had the opportunity to change 2 things tomorrow, you could say it and it happened.
Sure. I really believe that now you're putting me on the spot. 2 is hard.
Do you want me to reduce it to 1?
Okay, I'm not going to complain.
1 thing that you could change tomorrow. You wake up, you say it, it changes.
psyche. I really think that in transforming society from what it was to what we need it to be, we've made it a dependent society, not independent society. What I mean by that is people expect somebody to do something. It's a really difficult psyche to break from, because once you are there, you become a dependent state, and we are not. We don't have that many resources to meet the needs of so many people that are dependent. And that's a challenge right across the spectrum.
You lose your fighting spirit when you expect something.
Absolutely. Then it goes back to my second thing, which really is linked. The other side of the coin is we have to learn to be competitive. It's actually a race. We are chasing capital. We are chasing recognition. We just learned that that's the way life works. We have to compete. We have to compete at all levels. And I really believe there are instances when we talk, it feels like we live in a vacuum. We believe that our problems are unique to us. We believe that somehow, we're going to find our way into that. The world is moving on. It's when we latch on to where the world is going and start winning those races that we solve our problems. I fundamentally believe that.
You're a proponent of free market economics.
Absolutely. I really believe that resources that are abundant are the ones that human beings can create on a continuous basis. So that requires you to interact with the world. You have to interact with others. You can't actually be a closed economy and expect to prosper. I believe that's impossible.
I had the pleasure of interviewing Sim Shabalala recently, and I spoke to him about his age. He's young. You're young. And you're in a leadership position at a very young age. So you've got a huge amount of time ahead of you. Where do you want to go from here?
I believe, Bronwyn, that first of all, the jobs we do are a platform for us to transform society one form or the other. So absolutely, I have to get the job right, because that's important for the stakeholders that have entrusted me with this opportunity. But I believe more importantly, how we use these institutions to transform society in the real. For example, I really believe developing Africa requires financial service industry that's different to what we currently have today. So what I wish to have happened by the time I move on is that financial service infrastructure is accessible right across the continent. It's a small dream, but I believe it's doable, and I believe that it will actually lead to a completely different continent in terms of how it develops, the pace of which it's going to develop, and the pace of which it interacts.
Financial services infrastructure accessible across the African continent. I'm assuming that the digital economy plays a huge part in that access.
Absolutely. The digital economy clearly is the new infrastructure around which we are laying this on. We are not laying it anymore on bricks and mortars or on telephone lines. In a sense, digital becomes the underpin platform. Clearly for now, that's what we see, and obviously we are trying to link up with that and see how we partner with digital in creating the right solutions for what we do.
For your children, do you think we're creating the right South Africa?
I believe that each generation has got a job to do. Our job, to my mind, is to reawaken South Africa's spirit to actually the fact that it's got a role to play in the world. Certainly that's a part that I'm passionate about. I'm going to drive that. I believe that if my children join an era where they know that they are competing with everybody in the world and they're preparing themselves as such, that would be great.
Just one more question on South Africa, and that is that people are relatively depressed at the moment in this environment. Unemployment is high. I've already spoken about the contracting of the economy, which took many people by surprise, but they're now there's talk of a potential recession ahead, etc., etc. Is this cyclical, Thabo? How do we get out of right now that kind of feeling of we're depressed and we're not sure whether you can see the light at the end of the tunnel? Let me put it that way.
The beauty about an economy that's established is that it doesn't break down. You can reignite it again and get it going. We have slowed down because some of the fundamental things. There are global issues clearly that are affecting us, but I think some of the fundamental issues around our infrastructure, around our energy, and around not paying attention to what happens to mining sector as a key industry that employs so many people. These are the things that I believe we can fix. And I believe that when they turn around, we'll forget this period again. So it's a reminder that we are running something that's alive and that needs to continuously being serviced and being run properly. And if you make mistakes and you neglect certain things, it slows down like any other engine, you know. So we are in that phase where our engine is slowing down. What excites me though is that we are not sitting here folding our arms. All of us across the different parts of our society, business leaders, government officials, civil societies, we are talking about the real issues. I mean, the fixing of ESCOM, it's a critical issue. It's important that we have available energy, really available energy to develop our industries. Otherwise, our economy is going to go back 50 years, and we can't afford for that to happen.
On that message of hope, I think it's an appropriate place to draw our conversation to a close. Thabo, it's been a pleasure. I've been chatting to Thabo Dloti, the CEO of Liberty. You're watching Captains of Industry here on CNBC Africa, DSTV 410.